Good afternoon. The first thing I want to ask you to do before I introduce myself and the topic tonight, please make sure that you mute your phone. Self-preservation and relationships. This is the talk of the masterclass that we will be having today. My name is Dr. Harriette Howard-Lee Block. I am Department Head of Biology at Prairie View A&M University. When Black humans have been paramount in shaping the self-care and self-wellness space, these humans have been removed from the story. From centuries of oppression, Black humans have become distanced from our roots of wellness after and often becoming the caretaker rather than one who receives care. An integral part of empowering our community is to reclaim wellness by providing our community with the education and tools to connect with self, mind, body, and soul. This evening, as we take a look at the evolution of the stereotypical Black woman, it is important that we look at the history of the socio-historical hyper-sexualization of the Black woman. The social stigmas affecting the Black woman is something else that we need to look at today. And lastly, we need to make sure that we take observations and look at the microaggressions that are commonly received by Black humans when dating. The definition of this perspective that we're going to come from with the hypersexualization will be mentioned, but before I even get to that, I want to make sure that I let you know with this particular master class, in order for us to actually come full circle with all of the information that we need to talk about. And I think as African-American women, Black women at an HBCU, it is so important that we have these conversations. So the one thing that I want to say, and just ask a question, who are we as Black women? Just who is the Black woman? Which is something that needs to be looked at from all kinds of perspectives, because we are defined by so many people who really don't know us. It is important that as we look at this, we ask ourselves another question: how to be your authentic self when dating? Another thing that we need to touch up on, as Black women, we must acknowledge our diversity. You should never be afraid to show who you are, especially online, and you must remember to take care of yourself. Focusing on the Black woman or Black women and having the discussion during Black History Month is most appropriate. If you need the poster, or if you look or read the poster advertising this master class, there was a question to the end or at the end of that particular reading or advertisement. And that question was, through the journey of caring for oneself and extending oneself to the broader community, how can a bridge be connected in a more intimate context? And I had a student who came to my office and they were asking me, they said, well, what is that question really asking? So I'm going to state it in another way. How can you have your personal relationships as a Black woman and relationships with the community and maintain or preserve yourself without losing yourself in those relationships? So those are the things that we are going to look at. And hopefully once I finish the discussion or lecture, you will have the opportunity and you will be moved and motivated to make sure that we're having some type of dialogue so that we can just start this conversation all across the campus and all throughout the realms of your travels as you go from thus forth on. Through all of our experiences as Black women, we must bring attention to one of the first things that I started out talking about was the hypersexualization of the Black woman. And if you look at the screen, I have given a definition of what the hypersexualization of the Black woman means. And this is, hypersexualization involves the attribution by the media of sexual character to a product or behavior that has nothing intrinsically sexual about it. Hypersexualization can be seen in magazines, videos, films, the fashion industry, and particularly in advertising. And if you think about it, you see it all the time. If you look on the screen, what you will see are two women that one on the left represents what would be called the Caucasian or the white woman. The one on the right is a Black woman. But history will explain that in the European days, those women were bigger women, but when they saw us as African Americans, and it was not African Americans at that time, it would have been Africans, it was frowned upon. So let me just start by giving a little history with this hypersexualization and where it all started from. And let's just go back to slavery. And I'm going to take us way back to the 15th century. And then I'm going to migrate to America. So if you think about it, and a lot of times when we have these conversations about hypersexualization and us as Black women, some of us even internally, you may become afraid to say some of the things. But that's the purpose of this, is to make us recognize that we do have some problems and issues. So to begin looking at why the Black woman is viewed through this hypersexual lens, we must begin with the history of our people. So during the 15th century, so we're going to go way back to the 15th century, European travelers were going to Africa, and what they should have been doing, they should have been there on vacation. No, but instead, when they went around to the different areas, let's say they went to a different African tribe, they were so busy making judgments with things that they saw that they came up with the conclusion that Africans were sexually lewd. And I will explain how the sexually lewd statement are those two words derived in terms of explaining and calling us sexually lewd as Africans. So we're not in America, we're in Africa, 15th century. So one of the things that the Europeans noticed, and when I tell you this, if you think about it and you'll be saying in your minds, well, they were looking at the way the people, the Africans, were dressed. Now remember, these are visitors in somebody else's house, if you want to put it that way. So they had no business when they went over there talking about the dress of what the people had on. But if you think about the African climate, the climate in Africa is hot. Why are you going to have a whole lot of clothes on? But what the Europeans did, instead of thinking of it in those terms, they passed on and they made a judgment. The judgment that they made was okay, this is sexually lewd because they don't have a lot of clothes on. Then if you keep moving, and they went through different tribes, and they were looking, and I guess they were having conversations with different Africans, and they noticed that there was the practice of polygamy. And from that, they were able to make some type of judgment in their minds. And what you have to keep in mind, when I'm saying Europeans, these are not people of color that are making these judgments. So then a third thing that happened, you know, in the African culture, and if you go to the nation where you see the Africans, they are going to be dancing and having a lot of fun. And it's nothing wrong with that. They took the dancing of the Africans as suggestive dancing. That in itself, now you have three different things that they are using to put a label on us and call us sexually lewd. So you have to think about it. We still have not moved to America. So that's in the 15th century with the Europeans. Now what we're going to do, we're going to move it up a little bit, and we're going to go to the 18th century. We still haven't come to America yet as Africans. The slaves have not traveled. But there was an English colonist by the name of William Smith. And William Smith had the nerve, and this is directly what he said. He was an English colonist, as I just stated. He wrote that the African woman or the African women were hot, constitutional women or ladies who are continually, and he had the nerve to use contriving, who are continually contriving stratagems on how to gain a lover. So now you have from the 15th century to the 16th, the 17th, and now we've moved to the 18th century. And you know yourselves that a century takes up 100 years. So you've migrated 400 years and they are still looking at us as sexually lewd. And we still have not moved to America yet. But you have this English colonist who has made this statement, a broad statement about who we are as women. And it continues to carry over. Then if you continue looking at this, and I have not used this term yet, but this was actually the beginning of what we can call anti-Black sexual archetypes. This is another way that you have the stereotypical label being placed on a Black woman or Black women. If we continue with this story, and if you want to look at it this way, in terms of what they were trying to believe, this belief in itself that Blacks, and I will be very specific and say the Black woman, because of what has gone on and what they have seen, they are actually saying that we are sexually lewd. And this term, using the sexually lewd, actually predates the institution of slavery in America. And this has gone on for all of these years. So whites used racist and sexist ideologies to argue that they alone were civilized and rational. So that means that we as Black people were barbaric and deserved to be subjugated. So now we are moving to the concept of they're going to take us from Africa. And it's a lot of history that goes in that I cannot go over at this particular time. But within that migration, and we're moving, and it was a whole lot of us, and you know, some of us did not make it from Africa. But when they got to America and moving to the slavery in America, the Black woman, and they had the nerve to refer to us as Jezebel. I'm sure that you've heard that term. Well, I don't know if you know the definition of Jezebel, But Jezebel is a stereotypic term, and it was used during slavery as a rationalization for sexual relations between white men and Black women. So if you ever hear someone and they call you a Jezebel, now you know that that's a negative connotation, and you know exactly where it is stemming from. It stems from slavery. And these are things that you need to make sure from a historical point that you know. As we continue, the term Jezebel meant that a Black woman had what they would call an insatiable appetite for sex. Once again, and you know, now we talk a lot about implicit biases. We talk about microaggressions. If that's not one, I don't know what is. So now they're saying again, it came from Africa. Now they're calling us again a sex object, not looking at who we are internally, but judging us. So if we keep on, because we are in America, and you have to remember, we were slaves. And when you are a slave, slaves are property. And the property cannot fight against the owner of the property. And I think you know where I'm going with this. And I just said that they were calling us Jezebel. So if you look at it, the slave owners spread a lie. They started saying that we as Black women, they had the nerve to say that we were not satisfied with our Black man. That's the lie that they were permeating. The slave owners kept spreading it. So the slave era of the Jezebel, it was claimed, according to them, desired to sleep with the white man. And I can tell you right now, and you think about it in your heads, you know, Frederick Douglass and all of them, they were probably turning over. And if you read the literature, it will tell you that Frederick Douglass and others, they would say, no, that is not true. That is not what is going on. But let me take it a step further. So if you look at it this way, with everything that I'm telling you, now you have the slave owner trying to justify raping, and raping is what I said, the Black woman who was the slave. And you must remember by law at this particular time, as I just told you, that the slaves are considered as property. Therefore, the enslaved woman could not legally claim rape according to the law. But look at the backdrop of this, or the contrast of what I'm getting ready to tell you. I bet you can imagine in your mind that if a Black man had either consensual sex with a white woman, or even if it were forcible, the Black man would be put to death. And that's what they did. So now you still have this divide, but we are in America with what I'm talking about now. Other factors that we had during the slavery era that led to the opinion, and you heard what I said, opinion, that Black women and Black girls were highly sexual, was the fact that during the slavery time, there was a high pregnancy rate. And this was also used as proof to say that Black women had this insatiable sexual desire. And becoming pregnant has nothing to do with an insatiable sexual desire, because everybody in here knows that it just takes one time and you can get pregnant. Has nothing to do with having sex multiple times. If we continue, this very stereotypical statement that they continue to lean up on by talking about us, and it actually goes into, since it is a very stereotypical statement, and it's very stereotypical because the institution of slavery depended on the Black woman to supply the future slaves. So those pregnancies that they were talking about and judging us with, they were needed so that you could continue slavery. Unfortunately, for the Black the emancipation and reconstruction did not stop their sexual victimization. From the end of the Civil War, and a lot of you may find this of interest if you did not know it, to the mid-1960s. And look at what I'm about to tell you here. No Southern white man was convicted of raping or attempting to rape a Black woman. And I want you to listen to the year that I said. I said until the mid-1960s. Some of you probably have parents or grandparents who were born in the 1960s. Also, I want to mention in here, so therefore, although they could not be convicted of raping us as Black women or even attempting to rape us as Black women, yet that particular crime, and I'm going to call it a crime, and you know that it was a crime, it was very, very common. The portrayal of the Black woman as sexually lascivious or hypersexual became commonplace in American movies. Many people to this day keep the stereotypes going through social media. We as a people must examine ourselves and ask, are we contributing to the problem? So this is going to lead me to the next things or the next topics that I need to mention. When we examine, and there are some things that I need to look at, and one of them, if you look at the slide, you'll see it, is colorism. If you don't know what colorism is, it is live and well in the Black community. Colorism, and I'll say the definition of it, is prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. There is a battle in the Black community, and a lot of times we don't even address it, but you hear it all the time. And if you look at the picture that's on the slide, it is depicting a Black woman, but there are different shades on there. So it is not that one shade is better than the other shade. All of them are beautiful. And we as Black people in the race that we are in, if we don't start embracing it, and if we don't stop this colorism, then we ourselves are a part of the problem just as much as someone else. So it has to start somewhere. So this is why this evening in this master class, it is so important that you realize we have issues within ourselves as a race of people, and it is to us to stop using this as a measure of who is better and who is not. Oh, if you are light, you are better. If you are darker, you are the scum. You can't think that way. Everything is beautiful as it relates to the Black woman. It doesn't matter what hue you come in. And we need to start embracing it. That goes to the point of pitting us against each other. And you know, as a race of people, and you look at what's going on in the country today, they love to pit us against each other. And we as Black women, that's the last thing that we need to allow anyone to do to us. So be aware of colorism. And if you have time, please go and look at some of the articles that even deal with colorism in the social media today. You can look at it yourselves, and you will clearly see that at some point in time, there is a preference, and we don't need to be a part of those kinds of decisions. Oftentimes, if you think about it, there are other types of stigmas that are placed on us. And this is one, and I love that picture that's on there, Lizzo. This is one, and she is so proud. And I like the way that she has no shame, because all of us, there is beauty, as I have just stated, in all of us. So this takes us to the conversation of the weight bias and the fat phobia that a lot of people will sit up and talk about. So therefore, Black women are stereotyped with the color thing. Black women are stereotyped because of weight bias or fat phobia. And the definition of weight bias is defined as negative attitudes towards and beliefs about others because of their weight. These negative attitudes are manifested by stereotypes and or prejudices towards people who are overweight, or the term obese is sometimes used. Society judges people on their appearance. And you know, we as a Black woman, we are constantly judged on our appearance. Racial myths of the Black woman having naturally larger and curvier or thicker bodies permeate through our society. Media representations from the film, television shows, demonstrating us as sexual objects, and music videos comfortably, very comfortably characterize the Black woman as curvaceous. And it's nothing wrong with being curvaceous, but if you are using it as a negative tool to lead to us being overly sexed, then that's not a good thing. Black women's bodies in the social or media would sometimes, if you got caught up in what they say, it would be deviant, which is really negative talking, even using that particular term. And to put it on a psychological level, there are psychological effects of telling people that their bodies are wrong. That should not happen. The Black woman continues to be portrayed very poorly in the media. Let me ask you a question. When you think of media representation of the Black woman, what comes to your mind? Do you recognize any of these labels that I'm about to call out and say? Have you heard us call the angry Black woman? Have you heard them refer to us as baby mama, gold digger? And then on the other hand, they look at your body, and if they see that you're overweight, they have the nerve to say unhealthy fat Black woman. All of those stereotypes, they demean us as the Black woman. And we ourselves need to make sure that we are not in that community of bashing us as Black women, because we have enough people bashing us on the outside. But it has to come to a stop. And the only way that it will stop is by having a master class of this nature to bring attention to it. Younger Black women, because you all as young people, and that's what's in this room today, you are more exposed to the extremes of us being demeaned. I don't know if you look at it this way, but hopefully after you leave this master class, you will start looking at the things that they say in the social media about us as Black women. And the reason that this is so important, that I look at the perspective of my telling you that younger Black women are more exposed to the extremes. And because of this, there is a reason as to why all of this occurs. Number one, as a young Black woman, you are more likely to see the negative typologies due to their higher media consumption in general. Their higher tendency as a young woman to look into popular culture for cues. You as young Black women, you have an interest that sometimes allows you to want to self-express yourself by what you might see on or in the media. And there is a writer, And the name of the book that this young lady wrote is called Black Still Matters. Her name is Pepper Miller. And she wrote, there are the high-profile celebrities, entertainers, and sports figures on one side, and the impoverished, crime-ridden, and down and out on the other side. The flawed perception results in the rest of us being placed in what I would call the invisible middle. The label or the labels that have been placed on us, we must think about those labels, and we ourselves do not want to use those labels. The weight bias can be traced back to slavery. The label mammy, if you've ever heard that before. The label mammy is an American historical stereotype depicting Black women who work or worked in a white family and nursed the family's children. That's the definition of mammy. The fictionalized mammy character is often visualized as a larger sized, dark-skinned woman with a motherly personality. Now, we need to take a look at some other stigmas. What stigmas have caused or heavily affected the Black woman? Two of these stigmas that I need to address are a lower indexed marriage rate among the Black woman or Black women, and secondly, Black women experiencing less success on dating sites. The recent trend of the most educated women having higher marriage probabilities than less educated women overall has been well documented. I want you to follow me here. And it's been well documented in all of the literatures that you would read without any problem, very easy to see it. But what do you think they're going to say about our marriage rate as a Black woman? But if you look at the literature, they use the word drastic. And they say that it is a drastic difference in marriage rates of a Black woman and the marriage rates of a white woman. And I'm sure you probably figured that out yourselves without even looking at the literature. Marriage rates for the white woman, it has been fairly stable over the time. And you know I'm going to say the opposite as it relates to the Black woman. However, the same cannot be stated for the Black woman. Our marriage rates have declined. The decrease in marriage rates for Black women has been much more pronounced, leading to a persistent and growing gap in marriage rates between Black and white women. There is a real problem for us as Black women. If Black women, and you need to listen to what I'm getting ready to say here, if Black women, if we are marrying at lower rates while the fertility rate does not change, this has possible large negative implications for future generations, and it could lead to a cycle of increasing inequality between the most and least educated women. Let us look at the cause of maybe why we as Black women or where we are with this marriage rate. I will mention several reasons that have been cited in the literature. One is that the difference in marriage patterns with Black women is due to our marriage market prospects. The key words there are marriage market prospects. So we're going to look at the market prospects now. And whenever we start using words like marriage prospects, one has to ask themselves, where are the Black men? Most of you that are listening will know exactly what I'm going to start out with as the very first answer to that particular question. And I'll say it again in this master class. You probably are ready for the word that I'm getting ready to say. The word begins with an I, incarceration. Most of you should be familiar with that in terms of that's where a lot of our Black brothers are. And then you put the sex ratio in there. The literature reports that for the Black educated woman, there are only 70 Black men per 100 Black women. If you look at the other side with the white woman, it's 100 per 100. So we're already, once again, we're getting the bad end of the deal. So keep in mind, the sex ratio, 70 Black men to 100 Black women. The literature also states that another reason would be interracial marriages. Interracial marriages and the rate for that, they are much higher among Black men than for the Black woman. Less than 5% of Black women at an education level marry. And what they mean by the education level, they're talking about a very high education level, college, etc., marry interracially. While that number is more than double for Black men overall, and 14% for college-educated Black men end up marrying white women. So now you are seeing that our pool, not only did I tell you about the sex ratio, now those that we have in the 70 to the 100, they are dwindling away. So we're going to end up way down at the end of the totem pole. Then now, if you think about it, you have to understand that because we are in the situation that we are in, sometimes we think of, well, where do I go? Dating sites come into play. And with the dating sites coming into play, you have to turn the attention and ask yourself, Black women, as it relates to dating, we have a tendency to experience less success on dating sites. You know, dating sites are very popular. And one of the most popular ways to initiate a romantic relationship today is through online dating. And you know when it became more and more popular, and I'll mention that. The dating apps and the websites, they have become the most popular way for Americans in order for them to meet new people, and the only way to do so during the pandemic. So you know that whole number rose with the pandemic. Yet for many Black Americans, these apps, they never fulfill their promises. Despite hours and hours of scrolling and clicking, there's always a personality question where it comes up, we don't get what we need. There's a green dot that you might see on the screen, which indicates that you are online, but their profiles do not appear, or the profile appears invisible to everyone else. While Black Americans experience the implicit and explicit discrimination in many social settings, there's something different about the dating apps. With the abundance of options that we have and emphasis on visual cues, many Black women and people that are of other backgrounds, we experience all kinds of problems with this. In the literature, it was stated that many Black women reported that the interest from the white men was of a sexual nature, going back to that hypersexuality label. And the conversation would go something like this: I don't think we'll date, but I just want to have sex with you because I never had sex with a Black woman. That's not only sad, it's also a microaggression, and we're going to get to that. This also takes the Black woman back to the Jezebel mentality. The less success rate for a Black woman online leads us to another topic. Therefore, the typical dating systems that we see, they follow several formats. That's one that's called see and screen. There's another one, the algorithm, and then you have the blended. Most of them are going to use the blended view. They're going to use the algorithm and the see and screen. And you could look it up to see which one, if you're on a dating site, what they're using. But this brings in, and this presents a problem. And there are some studies that have indicated that white daters, they have the ability to have no problem with what they are doing. But us, because we don't even know who's making the algorithm. You don't know, it's probably not us of color that's making that algorithm. So you're going through a process, and somebody who doesn't even understand us as a Black woman has made this thing so that you can fill it out. So this would be the blended approach that I'm talking about. And since the online dating inceptions started around 2000, and it wasn't really accepted back then, but nowadays, even though the pandemic is still here and we're out more, it's still very, very prevalent. Few studies have explored the design of the dating technologies themselves. Many directly will sit up and tell you that this is the best thing for you and dictating from what you have put in there that it is, but it really may not. There is, however, a good reason for us to suspect that the interface and design features of online dating systems may affect our romantic relationships as a Black woman. Because it is influencing, because of the algorithms that they are using, not for the betterment of us. The algorithmic recommendations can direct daters' attention towards a potential partner that they may not have even previously looked at, or that they might not have encountered or wanted to encounter. So the question is, where is an automated system going in terms of, is there any type of bias? And I can tell you right now that when you have these automated systems, there is a bias that is there because of the biases that exist in our society today. To ensure that you are understanding my point, the literature reveals that a researcher by the name of Kushner, he compared dating apps to the case of an algorithmic parole system used in the United States to gauge criminals. The likeliness of them reoffending, and you know which way it's going, that algorithm always showed that it was the Black man that would probably have a second offense or third. So it was exposed as being racist, as it was much more likely for that Black person to return back to prison. With dating apps, and I'll apply it to that, We have seen people accepting and rejecting people because of race. So if you try to have an algorithm that is going to take those acceptances and rejections, and they try to predict what a people's or your preference is, it is definitely going to pick up racial biases. So you need to remember that with the algorithms and when you are using a dating app. Technology has a transformative power to connect people and to be a source of learning to expand our horizons. But apps that can play a role within society, and there's a professor by the name of Swami who said this, in order for there to be real progress, racism needs to be also tackled outside of these spaces. We tend to treat technology like it's in a vacuum. As long as racism exists in society, it will exist online. So the question we need to be asking ourselves, who is designing the algorithm for the dating that we as Black women or Black humans are using? Our next topic of discussion needs to be the microaggression piece. And when we look at microaggressions, and they are commonly perceived, and I need to give you the definition, the term is used, microaggression is a term used for commonplace, daily, verbal, behavioral, or environmental slights, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards stigmatized or culturally marginalized people. Microaggressions are closely tied to implicit biases. An example would be the Black person getting on the elevator and you get nervous. Asking a Black female colleague uninvited questions about her hair is a microaggression. You're working and you pass by, and the male that you're passing by, there's a light touch on your waist or your behind, and supposed to be on an accident at the coffee machine. That is a microaggression. So the constant assumptions that with you in a meeting, and a lot of times if the Black woman is in the meeting and if the Black woman speaks up and they hear the Black woman speak well, sometimes they'll say, oh, she's very articulate. That in itself is saying we as a people do not know how to speak, or they don't want to hear the voice because it is resounding so well. So in terms of the microaggressions, we have to be about the business of understanding. And when you hear the microaggressions, you can deal with it right on the spot. And you could tell the individual who is saying the microaggression in a very, very nice way, because you always want to be better than they are, that what you just said was very offensive. Those are things that we don't need to hear. In dating, you experience microaggressions. And I was having a talk with one of my colleagues, and we were talking about this on yesterday, that when they went on a particular date, and she said something that was very intellectual, not knowing that this particular male was going to come out, oh, you are Dr. X, Y, and Z. Those are microaggressions that we as Black women have to put up with quite often. And sometimes it occurs within our own race. But I know if you think about the environments that you have been in over the years, you have heard microaggressions that were said against you, that demeaned you, and you might not have said anything, but a skillful response would really stop and hopefully educate the individual. It may not stop them, but hopefully it would educate them and let them know the words that you are using to demean me, that is not going to work. And I know my time is getting slight, so let me just make sure I touch up on this. When we are in the dating scene, it is so important that as we go through the dating scene, that we show up in what would be called in an authentic fashion. So the question would be who we are as Black women. And let me just tell you what I mean by that. If you look at various pictures of yourselves online, you always take selfies. A lot of times filtering goes on. And you go through the motion where you put certain pictures up. And then if an individual sees you, they're like looking, and there you are. Oh, here I am. Well, you know what? Because you put that filter on there, you're looking a certain way. We need to show up like we are. Be proud of who you are. You don't have to filter anything. If people don't like the way you look, so what? And as I always say when I'm talking to some of my friends, you don't need a person to tell you how you look. You have a mirror. And my mother used to always say that. When you wake up in the morning, you can look in the mirror yourselves. So you don't have to worry about what people are saying. But when you present yourselves online, if it is not the right presentation, and when I say the right presentation, I'm talking about not showing who you really are. Let me just give you an example. A lot of times, if you're just putting things in a dating site, and I'm going to use the Black man as this, saying this, so it could be white, they may say, okay, I'm 6'1". And when you meet them, they're 5'4". That is a problem. But we as Black women, we need to make sure that we are being very authentic when we present ourselves in the dating scene. And I wanted tonight to make sure, because I know my time is running out, that I brought attention, because it is Black History Month, and I'm very grateful to the Honey Pot Company for allowing me the opportunity to have this masterclass and Impressions of Beauty, and our wonderful sponsor, Target. So thank you tonight for joining me. And if there are questions or discussions, we will have those. Now, make sure that you step down a little, as close as possible, maybe by the second ledger, and ask your question. I do hope that we will have dialogue about this. Thank you, thank you. You can speak, Zanae. You can stand right where you are. They should be able to hear you.
Hi, everybody. How are y'all? So my question is, what is some advice that you would give us as younger women getting into the dating scene? Because we're not on dating apps right now, but like as us growing up to the women that we're aspiring to be, what advice would you give us in the dating scene?
And you know what, Zanae, I'm going to ask you to remove your mask and say that question to make sure that the people that are listening can hear you.
Okay. So my question was, what advice would you give us young women growing up in the dating scene, trying to get into that, what's the word, that role that we're trying to get into? I know we have doctors, lawyers in the making. So what advice would you give us on getting into relationships, on how to be more vulnerable, to be more authentic and things like that?
I think you should always make sure, Zanae, that you are being yourself, and never let the social media tell you what is supposed to go on in a relationship. And let me give you an example. A lot of times Black women that are on TV, and let's say they are in the picture and they meet a man. It could be Black or white. One of the first things they do, they take you out, they feed you. You go home and you get in bed with them. We don't have to do that. A meal is not what our body is worth. We're worth more than that. So if you remember that, just remember it. That little meal, it might have been $200. I'm worth more than that. No. So what you have to tell yourself, I am who I am. You don't define me. I don't have to put on any image to make you like me. I love me as I am.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Yes.
Hello, everyone.
You may want to take your mask off, Naya.
To piggyback off of your question, what advice would you give us as we're pursuing our education? It's a little hard dating when you're a little bit more educated and you have an education. Some people are intimidated by that. So what advice would you give us for dealing with stuff like that, or dealing with those encounters as they happen?
The first thing I'm going to say, Naya, you don't want to lower your standards. Do not do that. And I believe, and I'm going to say this first because I'm a praying woman. I think you need to pray and just hope that you are led to the right person. Because, you know, in the Black race, there are so many divorces. But I do believe that our Black brothers and our Black men, they love us. And we have to understand, it doesn't matter if they don't look at us as beauties. We don't want them either. If we're going to go to the other side, that's okay. There are some brothers out there that will talk to us. Just keep the faith, Naya. Don't sit up and don't dumb yourself down. You keep that high level of intellect, because I know you're very smart because I've taught you. I know your intellect. So just make sure that you don't lower your standards. And I guarantee you, it may not be when you want it, but it'll be right on time, especially if you put it in the hands of who you need to put it in, and you know who I'm talking about.
Question.
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Joy. So my question is, you're like talking about how Black women are over-sexualized and things like that. So if a man sees your profile and you may be on the beach, post a bikini pic, so he's already expecting something before taking you on the date. So my question is basically, how long do you think somebody should wait before giving somebody the cookie? You know what I'm saying? Or, you know, so we won't just give in to what somebody's expecting, or, you know.
It's really a personal choice, because you should know, and you know, you can feel. You know, people can put on a front. And my daughter, she's a psychologist, and she told me, she said, Mama, in about 6 or 7 months, they will reveal who they are. Okay? Now, I don't know if in your mind you would wait that. It's only so long you can put a front on. You see what I'm saying? So if I don't say go into it with the mind that you want to have sexual relations with them, but you have to gauge it by the things that they are doing. But you could just sort of span it out just a little bit. Like I said, she said in 6 or 7, they're gonna reveal who they are. And that's very important, because you don't need to be sleeping with the devil. Okay? At the time you sleep with them, they leave. Okay? Because then you're gonna belittle yourself, and you made the decision to allow them to do that. But I think you just have to sort of gauge it with that feeling. You know, just how are they actually doing or treating you? And, you know, it's hard for people to keep up that farce. It really is. It's very difficult. Yes, Dr. Sanders.
May I chime in?
Stand up, Dr. Sanders.
Hi, Dr. Casey Sanders. I am a very proud single 40-year-old woman, because I am not defined by a man marrying me. And I want you young ladies to know that you are not, there's value in being a wife, but being a wife does not make you valuable. Understand what I'm coming from? It's okay to be single, because the Bible says the best time in your life is to be single, because you can give your life to God. You have all this time to give your life to God. And to you, Joy, if you have to ask the question, should I sleep with him? Don't sleep with him. Because if you can't sleep with him and be okay with him leaving you the next day, you might need to hold off. So that's the best piece of advice that I can give you. And Dr. Block's right. People are going to show you who they are very soon. And then you just got to ask the right kind of question. Come talk to me later. Ask the right kind of questions, and you can eliminate them pretty fast. But I want y'all to know that when you are out trying to get your advanced education, you might be a little bit older until you get married, but that's okay. But just know that there is a man that is out there for you who is going to love you, and you just have to be willing to wait for it, and don't settle. Don't settle. When people ask me, Dr. Casey, or whatever, why are you not married? Because I haven't met him yet. That's just as simple as I say. I haven't met anybody I want to marry yet, and that's okay. There is value in being a wife, but being a wife does not make you valuable. All right, young women?
Yes. Come on down a little so that we can make sure that we hear you.
Hey everybody, I'm Charity. I have a question, obviously. So I heard you saying about Black men, and I'm all for Black love, you know, I love Black love. But at a younger age, I see myself that I kind of noticed like how Black men don't really mess with, some Black men don't, go for the white ladies. So do you think it's okay, or do you think it's acceptable for a Black woman to prefer a man outside her race?
Oh, definitely. No, there is nothing wrong with that. If that's what makes you tick, then that's what you do. I'm all for it. I have no problem with that. For myself, I love my Black brothers. I love my Black men. But I mean, if that's what you want, I have no problem. I think if that's you're talking about, go for it.
Like, I want a Black husband, but I feel like as Black women, most Black men that I've seen, they expect us to lower our standards just because we are Black women. But they treat white women like at a high standard, but when they get with a Black woman, it's like they don't gotta do as much for us.
Okay. And I could hear it in your voice how passionate you are. That's that hypersexualization where they are thinking, all we're about is the sex, okay, hit it and run and all like that. That's what it is. But don't allow that to happen to you. You control your body. The only name on your body is charity. That's the only name on it. And one of the best things ever that you have, one of the best things is your body. And when you give your body, that is one of the most precious gifts. That's what you own. That's what you're going to take. You brought it in the world. And when you leave the world, it's going to go with you. It's the most precious gift when you give your body to someone. Because that means when you're giving it to them, you love them. In my mind, you wouldn't sleep with them if you didn't love them. I don't sleep with anybody that I don't have a love for. It's just not going to roll with me. I don't want anybody trying to do anything to me that I don't want them to even touch me. No. It's not going to work. Any other questions? And we just need to keep continuing having this dialogue, because it's so important as Black women that we love ourselves. And this actually gives us more motivation. Yes, Zanae again, make sure you take the mask off.
Okay, so as y'all know, breakups are really, really hard for us, especially being young. We feel like the world is over sometimes. What are some things that you would give an advice to somebody who's going through a breakup, something to self-persevere, something that'll help motivate you? Even though it shouldn't be that hard, but sometimes we need that pick me up instead of somebody saying, girl, you're gonna be all right.
No, it's okay when you break up. It is okay and it's okay if you break up and you are heartbroken. I mean, I've been there. But what you have to do is just tell yourself, if you are heartbroken, if you're broken up, or if you've broken up with someone, that, and I don't want to be as blunt as what's in my mind. I'm thinking about somebody that I know right now. Excuse me. And I know if they could talk to me right now, they would, okay? But what I'm saying is, if you're heartbroken, it might happen, and in this particular instance that I'm thinking about, it might have been for maybe 5 minutes because it sort of caught me off guard. But you know what? I told myself that, it's more to me, because the reason that I was given did not add up. It just didn't make sense. But I knew in my mind that if that had been a God-ordained or evenly yoked individual, then what this person said to me as the reason why they could not talk to me, I didn't need to be with them anyway. Because you know what? A lot of times things come full circle. When that person has sat up and said something to you, and this is what happened in my particular instance, they come back. What do you need to do when they come back? So what you have to do, as hard as it is, Zanae, and you may not be talking about yourself. You may not be talking about yourself. But you have to stay focused on the reason why you are here. And your life should not depend on somebody else. That's what we're talking about, relationships. We're talking about self-preservation. So if you're going to self-preserve who you are, if you put all of your heart in this relationship at that particular time, and you did not get what you needed in return, I guarantee you that individual was not for you. But it's hard, but as time goes on, you will realize and just look at things. As a matter of fact, there probably was some red flags. If you think about it, and you need to go back over and look at those red flags, but you also need to ask yourself, do you really want to be with somebody that doesn't want to be with you? No, you don't. If they don't want you, you need to get in your mind and just say, you know what? That's okay if they don't want me. I'm going to keep on going. And don't even worry about it. Although it's difficult, I guarantee you, you will, as time goes on, as hard as it is, it will get just a little better. But I won't tell you that it's easy just to say, okay, you know what? Don't feel like that. Nobody can tell you how to feel. Nobody can tell you how to feel. Any other questions? Yes, Reagan.
Hi guys, I'm Reagan. So let's say we go through the heartbreak and then we meet somebody new who's not as bad as the previous person was, but we're a little scared. How do we not become self-destructive in that situation?
Well, you know what? You won't know if that person is really a nice person for you if you don't give it a try. But you have to be open. You could easily tell that person, you know what? I've been in a relationship. It didn't go like I wanted. I'm a little shaky with this. And it's not against you. It's just me making sure that I keep my sanity and myself preserved while I deal with this relationship. Because that's what happens to a lot of women. You get so involved in the relationship that you forget who you are. And that's what we're talking about here as the Black woman. You can't do that. Be in the relationship, but never forget who you are before you even started the relationship. But you should be honest with the individual and just let them know, I do have a little apprehensions about this, but I'm willing to give it a try. But let's just take baby steps so that I can actually see just where is this going. And it's nothing wrong with taking baby steps. You should never allow anyone to rush you into something that you are not feeling good about. And I always tell people, if you have apprehension, especially on the first go, that is the Holy Spirit telling you to leave it alone. And that's what you need to do. Listen to that inner voice saying, no, leave it alone. There was another person that had a hand. Yes. You probably need to come down a little and just state your name.
I can project.
Okay.
My name's Candy. Hi, everybody.
You got to talk a little louder, Candy.
So my question is, being in a relationship, and you talked about people like giving their bodies and things like that. So, I mean, I'm not a virgin, but basically in a relationship, I want to be celibate. But it's like I've met people and they're like, oh, like you don't want to have sex, that's gonna make the relationship like boring and stuff like that. But I feel like experiencing having sex with people and like the soul ties that comes with it, it's like I want to wait to give my body like till I'm married.
There is nothing wrong with that. If that is the road that you have decided to take as your path, the celibacy road, I would not let anyone change it. You know what? If they are trying to change your constitution, they really don't want you. All they want to do is hit it and run. And what you need to do before they do that, you need to run from them because it is not working. Because if they really were interested in you, and if they really, really wanted to get to know you, they would listen to what you just said. You don't want to do that at this particular time. It is nothing wrong with that. And there are some good men, and I'll say good in terms of what you are saying with the celibacy, that will respect you for that. And they will be willing to walk that journey with you of celibacy until the time is right. And you're saying, I think marriage. It is nothing wrong with that. It is nothing wrong with that. They don't even need to know if you're a virgin or not, because you mentioned that. They don't need to know that. Because they may put in their mind, well, you know what you did, no. If you are telling them you want to be celibate, you stick with that. And if they really are want to ride with you, they'll ride with you with the celibacy. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, you really gonna have to come down. I'm not saying it to be funny, but you will.
I know we've been talking about relationships and stuff, but I had a question about just building yourself, because I came from like a town where there weren't a lot of Black people to coming here, so I felt very built, but I feel like I'm hitting like a plateau of building, and I just want to know how to build myself up to the point where I feel comfortable enough to just be with somebody else.
That self-esteem piece is very important. And the inner being, when you really look at yourself, you're a beautiful young lady, and you know in your mind that you have a purpose and that God put you here for a reason. And he doesn't make anything that's not special and that does not have the power to move into all kinds of directions. And I know you came from a town that you're telling me was predominantly white, probably racist, I'm assuming with what you're saying. And now you've come to an environment where you're around all of these beautiful Black people. And it has given you a hiatus, but for some reason now you are sort of having, I guess, the imposter syndrome where you are questioning things about yourself. But if you continue, wake up in the morning, and this is some advice, I'm in no way a minister, but you may want to do like a spiritual reading, just something to comfort you and build up who you are. Because when you look in the mirror, you know the value that you bring to the table. And I don't know if it may be, or it could be some friends that you are associating yourself with that could be causing you to start second guessing who you are as this Black woman. But if it is, you don't need to be with them. But don't allow this self-esteem that could be diminishing from the high level to the low level to put you in a rut. Because if you just think about it, at the end of the day, nobody can do you like you do you to the level that you do it in terms of, what is your major? Computer science, the algorithm people, okay? I would look at it in this particular term and just say to myself, you know what? I myself have so much to offer. And I feel good because I've been in this town where they didn't even value Black people at all. But I know my worth. I know my worth, God. And I just ask you every day that I wake up, give me that little boost that I need to hold my head up. And no matter what, I don't care who looks at me in a negative way. I know who I am, and I have a lot to offer. The best has just begun. And I think if you look at it that way, you will be okay. And anytime, because my office is on the 4th floor, if you need to come by and talk to me, or you can talk to Dr. Sanders, we're on the 4th floor. We are here to motivate our young Black women. So we are here for you. If you need that boost, I'm here. Come up to that 4th floor. I have no problem doing it. Okay, and I hope you even coming in here tonight has uplifted you and made you feel that your purpose is greater than what you even know. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, hi everyone, my name is Katie. So let's just say you had a very good relationship for like a lot of years, and you decide that, hey, I kind of want to find out more about myself. I want to be able to see what I am like without another person. But that relationship, it was very healthy. It was the person, he rooted for you in absolutely everything you did. My concern is like, when do you know to get back with that? Like what if you let a good thing go and you weren't exactly.
You know what? The problem with letting a good thing go, when it goes, it might not come back.
And
See, that's the problem. Because you don't know what you did in letting them go and how they felt. And they may not want to come back to you because of them saying in their minds, well, the same thing is going to happen again. So with that, I can't make any promises to you or to tell you that that person will come back, because it can happen, but it may not happen. It's a 50-50. So I just think you need to prepare yourself. If you go to the individual and you say to them, hey, I made a mistake. Can we try this again? And if they were to tell you no, I wouldn't get mad at them. Don't hate on them. Don't get mad at them. Don't get mad at them. You know, just tell them, okay, and admit to them, I made a bad mistake, but I really was hoping that we could try this again. And if you love them, this is so important, because people don't tell people that they love them. And then when they leave, it's too late. You need to let them know, I love you. Even if they don't tell you they love you back, then you know when you walk away, I put my heart out there, I told the truth, I can hold my head up, there's nothing wrong with it. But don't be afraid of the rejection that you might get, especially if you are the one that left the relationship. And I think you are the one that left it.
Dr. Block, we have a question from the chat.
Okay.
And it is, I would like to know if we should embrace lewdness being a part of our ancestors' culture.
You know, I don't think that we need to embrace it. I do think that we can grow from it, because we need to diminish and throw away the image of the lewdness, because that is not a good image. So I would not embrace it. I would just say, okay, this was a label that was put on us as a people, but I know that I don't have sexually lewd behavior. So I'm going to do what I can to know who I am as a person every day. And I will not carry myself as the definition of a woman who is sexually lewd. So I would not advise anyone to really embrace it. I would try to let go of it and say, okay, that's not who I am as a Black woman. Any other questions in the chat?
I think that was it.
Okay. Are there any other questions with the audience? I sincerely thank you for attending tonight. And I do think that your minds have been probed to just put in place, because this is Black History Month, and we are so gracious with the Honey Pot Company and Impressions of Beauty, sponsored by Target, starting this dialogue. Because if you think about it, and you know, I was just in Target. Target is now doing a whole lot of Black promotion, which is very, very good. We need that all over the spectrum. Everybody should have Black products in their stores. And we need to support and buy them. Honey Pot Company, that's a good company. It's plant-based with everything, and all of you know about it because a lot of you told me that. So let's look at us, our Black businesses, let's support it. And my hats go off to all of you. You are beautiful young ladies, as long as we remember to self-preserve ourselves, no matter who we give it to. Never forget about yourself, even if you're in a relationship, because it can happen so often where you dive into it and you actually forget who you are as a person. You even quit. A lot of us will quit talking to our friends on the phone when we get a boyfriend. We don't want him to talk to them. They call, no, I gotta be with my boo. But your boo is doing what he wants to do. He's not gonna let his friends go. You don't need to let yours go. You know, we need to embrace each other. Because if we don't do that, we're our own support system. And as I said earlier, wake up. And I didn't use it this way, but wake up in the morning and you may want to put a song on to just motivate you. Just listen to a song. It could be religious. It doesn't have to be religious. You know, there are love songs out there that can motivate you. Might be something classical that can motivate you. But wake up in the morning and just thank God that you are here and that you are a Black woman, and just pass on your legacy of who you are to other Black women. If you see a Black woman down, try to help her. Don't degrade her. You know, it irritates me when you hear people saying, and I was speaking with Dr. Sanders about this, you go in certain neighborhoods and they automatically say it's bad because it's nothing but us there. Who said that? You don't know who lives in that neighborhood. So you just can't let people continue to put a label on who we are, because we know who we are as a people. And we know our struggles. A lot of times if you go back and look at slavery, slavery taught us a whole lot. And one of the main problems with slavery was, and my father used to say this, they did not teach us, we weren't reading. So if you have a people that cannot read, how can you do certain things? But once we started reading, oh, it was out the chain. They couldn't tell us anything. So what you have to understand, although we have been so oppressed, and we continue to be oppressed. And it's not just the Black woman, my goodness, it's the Black man. I mean, they keep their foot on that neck. You saw what they did to George Floyd, and you saw how the man was so happy, like he had a deer that he had caught, and he was proud that he had the prey. And then you look at Ahmaud Arbery, and you look at how you hear those recordings of what they were saying about us and the names that they were calling us. Therefore, that oppression that is out there, and that's why this masterclass that the Honey Pot Company has put on, and Impressions of Beauty, it is much needed in the Black community. Everywhere you go, we need to be resounding. I am a Black woman. I am a proud Black woman. I love me. It's okay if you don't love me. I will be okay. It doesn't matter. So that's why I have on the slide, if you look at the very, very last one, it said, remember to care for yourself or yourselves. If you don't care about you, I guarantee you, nobody else will. And that's why they say the love begins on the inside, because it will exude from your body when you walk. When you walk in a room, people will know that's a proud Black woman. She's not worried about you. She's going on about her business. And have you ever watched the Black woman, especially when they have it going on? Listen to a person like Maxine Waters. She said, reclaiming my time. Maxine kept saying, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time. Maxine did not back down. But if you look at Maxine when she walks in the chambers, I bet they look at her because she's dressed when she walks in. So you have to keep in your mind that proudness that we as Black women have with us, and that sometimes even when we just walk in the room, it creates a stir. So we have to carry that image. Hold your head up. Don't walk with your head down. You are that proud Black woman. Think about slavery. Can you just remember and think about it? And when I think about what I told you about the Africans, just picture us in the cotton fields, Brittany, and we got to pick the cotton. I don't know if I could have done it, but because I probably would have been out there sweating too much, but they would have hit me and told me, you better get up, and I would have gotten up and done it. But I think in my mind, I keep telling myself, I hope I would have rebelled, but they probably would have killed me. But you know what? If it had not been for those men and women who took what they took, we wouldn't be where we are today. Now, it may seem like we are moving back, and they're trying to move us back. But you know what? We're going to move forward no matter what they say, because we know who we are as a people. And I don't care who you decide, Charity, to date, you still know that you are Black. It doesn't matter. You just said that when you came down here. It's okay. But just remember, when you wake up in the morning, walk out of your room proud. I love you all. Thank you.